Hello, and welcome to day two, day two, but day two really, of my 5-day series, Confusion to Clarity. I'm Dana, you know me, or maybe you don't. Hi, it's me, Dana, Dana Balicki. I'm out in Joshua Tree, I'm a transformational coach. Hey everyone. And I'm doing this 5-day series really to explore like all the different ways in which we experience feeling stuck in confusion, not sure how to move forward, have big decisions to make, don't know how to make them, or think, trying to make them and not sure if it's actually working. All the things that come up with trying to make big decisions in our lives, and the fears that come up, the challenges that come up, the opportunities that are there. And so, and how to get to clarity, right? Because clarity is not something that you just like, I always say, like, you don't just trip over it like a rock, right? I mean, sometimes we wish we would, like someone would just like drop out of the sky on us. We're like, oh yeah, we're so clear. I know exactly what to do with this big life decision. And I mean, I'm a Libra, right? So I've got like, there's confusion can like really get me if I'm not careful, and I worked on it really hard. And so I want to share what I have worked on and how I have gotten to clarity in so many areas of my life with you. So that's why we're here. All right, yesterday, and the replay probably just went down, and I'm actually going to put a link in my bio. So if you're watching this on Instagram, which is where I am now, but I might post this around later. But if you're on Instagram, you can go to the link in my bio after this, and I'll post a replay page. So you can watch yesterday's, which was all about the 3 ways to notice if what's keeping three things keeping you stuck in confusion and how to get to clarity. It was great. I loved it. People loved it. I mean, it's a good reminder for me too. And then today, day 2, fun day 2. Still looking good. We're going to go into fear of change, which is one of my favorite conversations. I got a little warm decaf here. It's a beautiful day in the desert. How are you doing today? Feel free throughout the time to just like throw up little emojis if something's resonating with you, if you have a question, if you just want to share something, by all means, right? Like that's what we're here for. So, I want you to think, right? Because we're diving into fear of change here. And I want you to take a moment, right? Like let's even just take a moment, deep breath, right? Close your eyes just for a sec. Tune into your body, feet on the ground. And I want you to just consider and think for a moment about your relationship to change. Right? It's a path, it's ever unfolding, it's a reveal. And we're often dancing between our desire for security and the uncertain nature of reality, right? So there's a natural tension that comes between wanting to stay the same and our desire to grow and change. So I just want you to get in touch with that. Hey, Sarah, get in touch with that for a moment, right? The tension that may be there for you between wanting to stay the same and wanting to feel secure and your desire to grow and change. This is super normal. If anyone's feeling it, feel free to let me know. But I want you to look at your resistances to change. And you might be like, I don't have any resistances to change. Like, I'm so ready for all this stuff to come on in. And that could totally be true, but we're going to go through in our time today, we're going to go through a couple of things. I'm going to ask you some questions. So I do want you to take out your journal. I'm going to ask you some questions that are going to help you sort of notice where you may be having resistance to change. Sarah says, yes, living in that tension, fearing and craving growth. Totally. Yeah, you're right. Yes, I kept getting a strong desire to flee and start over, but deep down, I know it's not the right time. Beautiful. These are such beautiful realizations. And so we want to work with this energy, right? And we want to notice where those resistances are, not because it's like, I got to get away. We don't want to like keep resisting the resistance, right? We don't want to just pile resistance energy on top of itself. we want to work with it, and we want to like maybe diffuse some of that resistance. And the way that we diffuse it is by seeing it, acknowledging it, being aware of it, knowing where it comes from, and then being able to like start identifying it when it comes up and starting to like gently dissolve it, right? So it's all totally possible. We'll see how far we get today. So again, this is day 2 of the Confusion to Clarity series. I'll post yesterday's replay up. I'll post a link in my bio. In your homework, right? I'm already giving you part of your homework right now. If you so choose, is to get the Slow the F Down guide. It's an audio guided meditation, visualizations, also a link in my bio. Or if you're watching this somewhere else or on the replay, you'll see the link below. Somewhere, just look for it. But it's a guided visualization and meditation. And you'll also get added to the waitlist for my next course, should you be interested in taking any of this further. Because you're like, yeah, I'm trying to make big decisions. I'm trying to make change. And I'm like running up against a wall. Or I'm like overwhelmed with fear. Or I just don't even know what I want. I don't even know how to want what I want. Can I let myself want what I want? That's a big one. So here we go. So we're talking about the tension between wanting to stay the same and our desire to grow and change. And don't mind me, I've got notes over here because otherwise I could just like literally talk for the next hour. And I'm trying to I want this to be a little power time for us. So journal out. So we're going to look at your resistances to change right now. And you might think you have them or you might be aware of them or not. So just listen and see how these resonate. So first, there's a few things. There might be parts of you that are radically resistant to creating what you want. So a way to know if you're struggling is to look at these patterns, right? These are aspects of your being, these behavioral patterns. So the first one is self-sabotage. Self-sabotage. So when things start to go well in your life, right? Like things, maybe you start to notice a little flow, things are coming in. Do you find a way to sort of take yourself out of the game, right? And that might look different for all of us, but do you find it might be like retreating? It might be, there's so many different things, right? So just you notice for you, like what taking yourself out of the game might look like and feel like, right? So maybe you feel like you dropped the ball. You let things sort of fall through the cracks, like, fall through your fingers. You feel like you're like just sort of screwing up. Right? So notice if that's something for you, self-sabotage, right? Where things start to go well and you find a way to sort of take yourself out of the game, drop the ball, let things just sort of slip through the cracks. And all of a sudden things are just sort of falling apart again. And you find yourself back to that place where you're like, what do I do? Okay. I got to sip my coffee fast because it's getting cold here. My office is chilly. So the second is procrastination. This one is so popular. So procrastination, anyone identify with that one? It's where you find yourself just like not getting started, not following through, right? Which one is that alive and kicking for anyone here? The third one is, oh yeah, I've got a couple. I got a couple of thumbs up on procrastination. So the next one, the third one, is perfectionism. This one is like can be majorly me. I've got a Virgo moon, if that means anything to you, but perfectionism is a real thing. Yura says not following through is killing me this year. Okay, good. You're in the right place, sweetie. Right? I don't have all the answers for you. I'm not pretending like that, but these questions that I'm going to ask you and some of the stuff, unpack it a little, which is always going to the more we can look and see what it is and not just observe it, but actually start to observe it, and we can move it. Chalice Girl, Virgo rising. See you, sister. Totally. Right. So perfectionist. So does everything, and some people might not identify as perfectionist, but this is perfectionism, is when when everything has to be exactly right before you can take a step into any sort of action. So that could show up and I'm just saying could show up if you're like, oh yeah, I want to do this thing, but it's not the right time. And legitimately timing is important, right? So sometimes people, it's like, oh man, I've got all these things going on. I just don't have time and room and space in my life. And that can be real. And we have to notice when we're like using it as a justification to not do the things that we say we want to do that are really important to us, right? If they're keeping us from our values. If you're like, I've got a lot of things going on in my life, but they're all aligned, or a lot of them are aligned or leading me to alignment. I can understand how they're super important to me, like, like how they're moving me forward in my life or whatever it is. That's one thing. But if you notice yourself just constantly being like, oh, it's just not the right timing, I don't know, right? We're going to talk about confusion a little bit in a sec more too. But perfectionism, right? So if things have to be exactly right, you're like, oh, I need exactly this much money in my bank before I can do this thing, or I need to, whatever it is. Hey, Marla, honey, I just saw you pop up here. So, so notice any of those. Right now we're talking about fear of change. We're looking at some of the like patterns that might be showing up for you as you're trying to call in change. And we've got perfectionism, procrastination, self-sabotage so far. So there's also like this idea of like lack of clarity, and there's indecision. And sometimes, we can sort of, I'll try to tease them out just a little bit here to see if you can like maybe notice a nuance between them. So lack of clarity is more like, you don't start because you're not sure what you want. So sometimes I call that like lack of, it could be like lack of vision, like, oh, I don't know what I want. And indecision is like is like the not deciding keeps you from moving forward, right? So they're a little bit different, right? So like they can both just sort of feel like confusion. And so, however you're identifying with it, but lack of clarity is another one. And that's really about like, you're like, I don't have the answer, or I'm not sure like that it's going to look like I can't see if it's going to look exactly like this thing that I want. So I'm not going to do it. Is that anyone feel that one show up for them? Lack of clarity, or indecision, like the just sort of staying in the, I talked about this yesterday in day one. So if this is you're going to want to go back to the replay, which is in my bio, or if you're watching this somewhere else, you'll see a link somewhere here, for day one about that, right? About indecision and about confusion and staying in confusion, right? Because it is going to keep you from moving forward. So these are little like signal lights, right? Like I think of it like a car where it's like your oil light goes on, your engine light goes on, and it's like to let you know, like, hey, you got to look at something over here before it gets really messed up. Right? So that's what these are. Even though it's like, oh, they come up and you're like, oh, get away. You want to notice them because they're emotional too, right? Like you feel, or they're energetic. Like you can feel the energy, like the energy of those things, right? You can feel that energy of like procrastination and like it's like heavy, sticky energy, right? So it's like letting you know to pay attention. Okay, so I want to ask you a couple of questions about change, right? And so these are questions that I've asked myself many, many, many times over the years. And so I want you to write them down. You might not get all the answers now, but I want you to journal on these because these are going to help you if you're resonating with any of this, to move through some of this. So, if there is a change that you're trying to call into your life, right, I want you to bring it forward. And you can rewatch this later and do this, but if you've got your journal here, or if you're just like sort of taking it in now, that's fine. But I want you to like bring that change forward. So maybe it's a change in a relationship, your lifestyle, your career, like your location, ways of communicating, and anything, right? So if there's a change you're trying to call in, I want you to like presence it, right? Say it out loud to yourself right now. Like, what is the change that you are trying to bring in? You're welcome to share here in the group, but just presence it for yourself, okay? I'm gonna give you just a sec. Even if it's sort of like change in my life, like even if it feels a little vague, it's okay, right? Just start naming it, right? Like name it, change it, name it, change it. All right, so first question is, what will happen if this changes, right? What will happen if this changes? And you can even just feel this energetically right now, like even notice like, oh, what am I, hey Shoshana, What am I feeling, right? Like, what will happen if this thing changes, right? So if you're like, here's the change I want to call in, what will happen if it changes? Notice in your body, because your mind might be saying like, yeah, liberation, yeah, all this amazingness, and you might actually feel something different. You might be like, ooh. So notice, okay? Because this is giving you information here. Good. So that first question is, what will happen if this changes? Just like write it down. The next question is, how will other people feel about it? Right? So like, I mean, this is what you're imagining, obviously, but like, how are other people gonna feel about it? Sorry, I'm getting like so close here. How will other people feel about it? And this is like your perception, like, oh, so-and-so is gonna see, if I'm successful, so-and-so is gonna see me as a fake, right? Or they're gonna see me as, right? This happens a lot with artists or even activists, right? Like a lot of communities that I am in, work in, have been in for a long time, you know, where it's like, oh, if I get too successful, people are going to see me as a sellout, right? Or, you know, I mean, we have all these stories and there's all these cultural myths that we're swimming into, right? So you're not fully responsible for all of these stories that you have taken in, but I want you to notice them. Hey, Luke, honey. So this is, you know, the question as you're looking at the big change you're calling in. First one is, what will happen if this changes? Notice actually how you feel, not just like what you imagine that you want to feel. And then how are other people going to feel about it? What you're perceiving other people are going to feel about it, okay? Now, next question. Here we go, a little deeper into this. Is, what pain might I experience? What pain might I feel? What pain might I experience? What difficulty, pain might I experience if I make this change? Right? What pain might I experience if I make this change? Because if you have any of those things that I was talking about, like lack of clarity, self-sabotage, perfectionism, procrastination, like all those things, those are protectionary, right? I want you to, like, even though you like hate them, when that shows up, like, it could be very like part of you just trying to protect yourself from what I call the triple P, perceived potential pain. Right? So part of you is like, oh, well, if I sabotage myself, if I take myself out of the game, if I just don't do it, if I just procrastinate, then I'm not actually exposing myself to the perceived potential pain I think is going to happen if I make this change. Y'all feeling me here? I know this is like heavy for Saturday morning or afternoon, but like, you know, it's the time. All right. So I know for me, like when I was building my business, and this one still comes up for me, I'm not immune, was that I was afraid that I'd be overworked and undervalued. And that came from my past experiences as an organizer and working in the nonprofit industrial complex. So those were, you know, like, oh, if I build my business, I'm just going to have to overwork again. I'm just going to, like, you know, so, oh, good. The Farius 5 says this is very helpful. Sarah, perfect timing. Good. I'm glad. Roll with me here Saturday morning, kiddos. All right, so the next one is, what will I lose if I make this change? What will I lose if I make this change? Like, connecting to the feeling of loss. Because I'm I bet it's out there for some of you. Okay? So what will I lose? What am I afraid that I am going to lose if I make this big change in my life? Right? So you can imagine that you're losing a relationship, you're losing love, you're losing freedom, right? That was sort of like how I was feeling, losing yourself, your sense of self, losing security, right? Like, oh, if I tell my family this thing, they won't be there for me in the same way anymore. Scary, so scary. If I tell my partner this thing, like, or if I make this change and I tell them, or I move on it, like, they're not going to support me. I'll be all alone, right? Notice for you, like, what is the, this is like tuning into a belief, and tuning into your beliefs, just as a side note here, is your beliefs are the crux of everything, right? This is the work that I do as a coach, is like we go deep on your beliefs. Luke says, having too much responsibility, losing easy breezy flow. Totally. Right. So for some of us, it's like, what, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I've like I feel that one too, because I live out here in the desert now. I don't live in New York anymore. You know, I've been out here for years. I've created this really beautiful life, and I'm like, oh, if I like, you know, if all of a sudden I want to like crank and do like all these things, that like then my day is going to be too full. I'm not going to have any space, and I worked really hard to make this space. I feel you, right? So this is true for all of us, probably in some way or another, right? So what will I lose if I make this change? All right, so those questions, you can go back and watch them later and answer them once the replay's up, which I will post the link to the replay. Well, it'll be here in my IG stories. I'll post the link from yesterday up in the link in my bio in Instagram. And also I'm going to give you some homework in a moment here. Besides going back through these questions and going deeper, I want you to also, what's going to help you like gauge, create, make space for clarity, is my Slow the F Down guided meditation. And visualization. So it's meditation. I don't know why I said it that way. Meditation, visualization. It's a mini training too. So it'll sort of build on some of the stuff we're talking about here. And you'll get a really sweet grounding meditation. And like, that's really like a building block of your sort of energetic centering. So if you're feeling any of these things, it's a little bit like, woo, and it's Vata season. Right, so it's like it's dry, it's windy, it's ungrounding. So we need to ground, and when we ground, we can see ourselves more clearly. Okay. So losing comfort or the illusion of comfort. The fire is 5. Yes, losing comfort or the illusion of comfort. Totally. And noticing that maybe it's an illusion. Right? We talked about this yesterday in day 1. When we were talking about the 3 things that are like keeping you in confusion, which was like this feeling of like security, like it's, you know, like I sort of feel like I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat because I'm afraid I'm going to like tip into the water and sharks are going to eat me or something, right? So it's just like this, sometimes it's an illusion of security because we're not actually, we're not actually happy where we are. You're welcome, Lee. Good to see you, honey. So those are the questions that I want you to like dig into and lean into, because that's going to help you see like if that security is even real, right? Or that comfort is even real, or is it the illusion of it, right? Maybe you just got a little bit and you're like, oh, I don't think I could get any more, so I better just hold on to this little bit, right? And that's a limiting belief. That's a limiting belief, right? That there's not more, that there's not more security, that there's not more safety, that there's not more pleasure, that there's not more comfort, right? Like these are all stories that you've been told or are telling yourself. I think I waited too long. And it's cold. Okay. So, hey, Adrian. So I want you to, there's a couple questions I want you to also answer, a couple more, right? And this is going to we're going to see like what else is here for you in this change. So honor yourself for a moment for digging deep, right? Whether you're doing this now or later. This is the way things change when we look at the resistance in the face and we're like, oh, I see you. Because you're creating space from it and you're observing it. And once you observe something, you've brought it up from the unconscious, from the ego into the conscious mind. And this is the only place that it can change, is in when it's conscious. You can't change it when you can't see it, when it's in the unconscious. You can only change it up here. So bringing it to the surface is making space for change, making space for clarity. See what I did there? All right, so next question is, what's the positive benefit of staying where you are? I said that this is a little bit of a like a change up, but like, you know, may or may not, might just feel like more difficult questions. So go with it. So what's the positive benefit of staying where you are? And the second part of that is like, this is like a little bit of a deeper dig here of like, what's the positive benefit of staying stuck where you are, right? So if you're feeling, hey, Jess, honey, good to see you, or see your little face. So the question is like, what's the positive benefit of staying where you are, or then, and you can do some writing on that. And then what's the positive benefit of staying stuck, right? So if you're just sort of like, if you're like, oh yeah, this is where I am and this is nice and this is okay. But then if you bring in that feeling, those stuck feelings that you're experiencing, and you're noticing that, like, oh, right, like, you know, what's the positive benefit of that? So it could be like, I'm familiar, I'm comfy, right? Someone was talking about comfort. I probably won't rock the boat. People won't expect more of me if I stay here. That's real. So, or if I stay the same. And so what's the downside? Next question is like, what's the downside of things changing? Right? What's the downside of things changing, of getting over and through the issue? Right? You might feel there's a perceived downside to it somewhere in there. Could be like, ooh, more responsibility, like more room for judgment and more drama. I don't have any more room for drama, which if your life is full of drama, could be an interesting thing to look at your relationship to drama. We'll save that for another one. Maybe more room to be criticized. What if it doesn't work? A sense of maintaining safety, right? A lot of things we've talked about already. So what's the downside of things changing? Oh, I made myself some notes the other day. Fear of regret. That's a good one. I mean, good to see it, right? The fear of regret. Jess says it's easier, right? It's easier to stay. Yeah. Easier to sort of stay stuck or like it to not change, right? Because here's the thing, and I talked a bit about this yesterday, and I'm going to wrap here in just a moment, is that we can use confusion or any of these things that any of these patterns that we're talking about today, the not changing, to keep us feeling safe, right? Because confusion is a safe haven for us, right? Because you know how to navigate confusion. You know how to you know how to move through it. You're like, yeah, I don't know what to do, but I can keep myself busy with this, and then I've got this, and then I got these things going on, and I'm still, I'm doing my thing, and I've got some self-care in here, and even though this isn't exactly what I want, it's okay. It's not the worst in the world. It's not the worst it's ever been, or maybe it is, but I want you to key into that, right? Are you feeling a pull towards greatness, but you're sort of staying in the it's good enough. And I feel you, I'm been there too, and still find myself going there, right? And then gotta work my way through it. But to stay in confusion as that safe place, to stay in any of these patterns as a form of safety, as a form, like I said earlier, protecting you from the triple P, the perceived potential pain. And wanting to feel a sense of safety. Maybe you worked hard to get where you are, even though you know that there's more for you. And it feels too scary to maybe it feels like you're about to sacrifice something, right? And that's a pattern, right? It's a pattern that gets reinforced every day. In our world, in our culture, that we have to sacrifice for good. We have to sacrifice for joy. I don't believe that that's true. I believe it's a myth. It's an old story that we're told, and then we just embody it, and then we keep going with it, but we can actually start to change it. But we can only change it if we name it and if we see it, and if we're oh shit, yeah, in my life, I've totally felt that I've had to sacrifice in order to have any joy or to have any pleasure, any whatever it is, right? So I made some notes last night because I was I've been reading some neuroscience stuff, and so I was I was writing about the limbic center of the brain, right? And it takes us into that fight, flight, freeze, appease when faced with unknown certainty, right? So it calls up all that stuff around safety, and it's just really, it can ring really loud. And so just that's why the grounding meditation, actually, so I mentioned it a couple times already, but it never hurts again, in case you just tuned in or you tuned out all the others, that there's a Slow the F Down guided meditation visualization in the link in my bio. If you're watching this somewhere else, you'll see a link somewhere for it at thatclearlife.com. I just made it so if you go to that site, it'll just pop right up on the front page, so you don't have to search around. So thatclearlife.com. And that'll, that grounding meditation is going to help, right? Sort of soothe that nervous center, yeah, the Fires 5, especially when you've experienced childhood trauma. Absolutely, right? So the trauma brain, or the trauma memories in the brain, will totally will absolutely have a very grooved pattern for how you know how to survive and move through something, and move through something traumatic, or that we keep relating, like trauma, the fear of trauma keeps coming up. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much more than I could say in this little bit, but I do a lot of this work with my students. And I am opening up my course called Clear, I might as well be direct, next week. And so that's an opportunity to dig deeper into a lot of this work. But over the next few days, so tomorrow and Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to do some more lives. And we'll keep talking about all of this and digging into it. And so I really want you to give yourself permission, right? And if you need to create safe place, safe space, and the grounding can really help with this, to give yourself permission to see the fears and see the resistances. Because when we see them and we notice them and we create awareness around them, awareness is the first step. It's not the only step, right? So it's not I see them, and so then cool, it's all good. But sometimes we can also, especially if we've done inner work, or maybe we've done therapy for many years, and this is no shade on therapy at all. I have therapists, go for it, right? But sometimes we're in therapy where it's just a lot of insight and there's not a lot of action. And so we're just wait, I have all this insight. And then we can sort of rest on the insight as a justification. Well, yeah, this is what's up with me. And so this is why it is the way it is. And we'll just sort of perpetuate that pattern, right? Anyone feel me here? I might be going a little bit off on a tangent. I should stick to my notes. But I want you to just, as you really bring, maybe slow down, do the grounding meditation, bring these resistances that are in the unconscious mind up to the conscious mind, to really just be there for yourself, because a lot of those fears came up when you were a kid, and sort of programmed into you at a very young age. And so your ability to right, just be with that young one, you can even visualize, right? This is little inner child work here, which I wasn't expecting to do, but let's do a teeny bit, where you visualize that young one, that young version of you that was the one who went through the difficult time, went through the trauma, right? And just that soothing of that one, oh, right, they were just trying to figure out how to be alive. They were just trying to figure out how to survive, and to honor that, right? To honor and acknowledge their will to survive, and to remind them we are not in that place anymore. We are not powerless anymore. We are grown as humans, and we have power now, right? And just to remind yourself that you do have the power to change your life, right? To get out of any circumstances that are unhealthy, that are, or, violent or dangerous. Please go, get out, right? And I don't say that as a way of making it easy. It's just I just want to be clear that that's what I'm saying, right? That this, looking at the resistances and working with them, or working with the fear, that, I don't mean if you're in a dangerous situation, right? So that's, I'm gonna, I want you, sometimes with this kind of work, I'll go into some some EFT or some tapping, some different things to sort of work through this in the body. And if that's something you already do, that's great. Do I want to do that right now? We're at 9:34. I have promised to keep these short. So I'm going to, because I could totally just sit here for another 30, 40 minutes. And we all have lives to lead, to live. So I do know, though, that the grounding meditation, and I keep hounding on it, but because it's powerful, right? It's that is going to help and support you with taking all this stuff that feels very in your field. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm procrastinating. I can't get it going. I keep dropping the ball. Whatever, the self-sabotage, procrastination, perfectionism, all of it, lack of clarity, that it's going to help ground that in, right? So it's this is going to help. You need to ground in your body, ground into the earth, literally with your energy, right? And that's going to help create some space for clarity. And I want you to not just do it once, right? The point is to do it a bunch, right? So like the point is to like cultivate even a regular grounding practice. So once you listen to me once, even twice, you'll get how to do it. It's very simple. And you can do it throughout the day. You can do it in the mornings, right? Just like even a few moments throughout the day of just grounding your energy down to the core of the planet is gonna shift. It's gonna shift the way you're moving through the world, right? So you've got homework. You're gonna, go back through these questions, do some deeper journaling, really get a sense of like where these patterns are showing up for you, and then going to thatclearlife.com so that you can get, or the link in my bio, to get the guided meditation and visualization. And you'll also get added to my list for when I launch and open the doors, open the digital doors to my course in the coming days. So if you're like, oof, like I got stuff to move through, then you'll have some opportunity. Oh, yes, you're so welcome for these videos. Jess says, surely psychoanalysis rests with awareness and little change. Yeah, it can for some, right? So, it's like everyone's different. Everyone responds to different kinds of movement. I personally respond to like deep, insightful work with action, right? With movement attached to it. So how do we move that energy? How do we move that insight into action? And not because I want you to do. No, I want you to like soak and simmer in your being. But I want you to take that insight and feel your power that you have to like move it and to make change, right? Because sometimes change feels so monumental. That's what we talked about yesterday and today, that it's like stifling. It feels too big. And I want you to see that like, it doesn't have to be that big, and that we can just like make it like incrementally. It's little by little, then all of a sudden, as a beautiful teacher, J Love, a beautiful teacher of mine used to say, J Love Calderon, she would say, little by little, then all of a sudden. And it's really been a mantra of mine for the past decade. And I found it to be true every single day. So thanks for being here. I'll be here again tomorrow. I know it's Sunday, but I had to pick a time, wanted to keep it regular. So you can watch me live, join me live tomorrow right here, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT, whatever, wherever you are. And we're going to go tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about the juicy time of inquiry. So if you're a student of mine, you'll know this is active waiting. And we're going to talk about like, how do we make the most out of the time that we're like, wait, I don't have the big change that I want. Like, what's this weird, like liminal space? And we're going to like talk about how to like work with that liminal space in a really like grounding, juicy way so that you can get the most out of it. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Do your homework. I'll do mine. And have a beautiful day.